Welcome to Red Light, Green Light, the podcast where you'll hear from industry leaders in science, technology, and innovation about the power of strategic storytelling. With decades of experience, our guests will share their own insights and real-world stories to help you avoid red light barriers and ignite green light solutions, from the Zoom room to the boardroom. In each episode, we'll corkscrew downward into the guests' personal experiences of challenge and success, highlighting strategies that turn complex ideas into clear, compelling storylines for stakeholders. Here is where expert minds share stories that shape the future. What's more, you'll walk away with tips to try immediately to drive the vision of innovation with your team. Here is where expert minds share stories that shape the future. What's more, you'll walk away with tips to try immediately that drive the vision of innovation with your team. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Red Light, Green Light. I am your host, Cindy Skalicky, and every week we bring to you an awesome guest who's going to share their storylines, having had decades in the industry of all of the areas where most of you live on a day-to-day basis: science, technology, finance, innovation, pharma. These really challenging to explain concepts, AI, crypto, whatever it might be. Those are sort of the places I really enjoy understanding, how do people communicate these very complex ideas? And today I have a guest I'm very excited to share with you. His name is Dr. Seth Dobrin, and he is with ARYA Labs, right? Dr. Seth, I'll just call you Seth if you're okay with that. Welcome, Seth, to the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity, Cindy.
Yes, of course. We are going to have a great conversation today. And I wrote a few pieces from our initial conversation. Everybody, you are in the presence of some pretty cool greatness right here with Seth. He is, he is like at the intersection of so many different areas that he's done in his life. He's a geneticist by trade, right? And training, PhD, has had his own laser lab. We talked about the Human Genome Project and one part of our conversation. He's done startups on several occasions, ran a corporate research lab, and has really done a lot of different things. Oh, also first biologist ever employed at Motorola. Have I got that part right, Seth? These are cool things where, you've sort of parachuted into some industries where you are sort of the other, right? You're not like, something here is not like the other. So can you give us some kind of, 30,000 foot view of some key stepping stones from your path?
Yeah, I think, I think and unfortunately this wasn't intentional, but, I think when I look back, and I often tell people, do this with intention. I wish I had done this with intention.
Right.
I think, yeah, I think,
Last week, right?
yeah. I think it's good to kind of think about what the thread is throughout your career, right? And
Yep.
looking back, there was a solid thread throughout my career that kind of lead to the stepping stones.
Okay.
And even though I was in all these different things, the thread was and still is, how do you take existing tools and technology and weave them together to industrialize them in unique ways to add value that no one's ever seen before.
I love that.
And to kind of, take you through the stepping stones, when I was at Motorola, where I was the first biologist ever employed, where I had my own laser lab, it was by far the best job I ever had. Right. I was still in graduate school. They said, go forth and figure out what we can do in biology. Basically.
It's like real Star Wars laser. I'm imagining like.
Yeah. I mean, it was literally go figure out what we can do. I had a laser lab. I had access to science, to fab. A fab. If you want to learn how to do microchips, go ask someone. If you want to learn how to, literally whatever you want to learn how to do in a corporate research lab, I had to do. So that was by far the most fun I ever had.
So cool.
to going into a biotech startup, to starting my own company, to going into a research institute. Even when I was at a research institute, it was, kind of in the middle of the Human Genome Project, or at the tail end of the Human Genome Project, and we were trying to figure out how do we take all of this information we had and how do we scale it up so we can do something with it at scale. And so I was taking actually some of the stuff that we had done at Motorola, and it was this time when microchips had come. So everyone's heard of 23andMe, for better or worse, right? The technology that 23andMe uses to do your genome sequencing, it's actually a microchip. How do we scale those so we can do those and kind of actually get information, actually be able to study diseases and inheritance? And so the lab I was in, we figured out how do we do that at scale? So how do we industrialize that process? And then I went on to have my own NIH grant at another lab and did that. And then I got a call from Monsanto, which is the story you want to talk about later. And another thing I tell people, a guy from Monsanto called me and said, "Hey, I'm Stan, I won't use his last name. Do you want to come work for Monsanto?" I said, "Probably not, but I'll come talk to you."
So, but you took
the
meeting.
Always go talk to someone.
Always take the meeting.
Because it was a great job. Monsanto was a great place to work, whatever you think about them. It was a great place to work. I had a lot of fun. I worked there for 10 years. And then I went to IBM. So human geneticist, semiconductor company, biotech startup, academics, agriculture company, tech company, now tech startups, right? So it's kind of the whole. So ARYA Labs, as you mentioned, is what's called a world model company, which is the next iteration of algorithms after the chat GPTs of the world, and they're called world models, and they're essentially representations of the world. And so it's how your brain works. And so they look at the world the same way your brain looks at the world. They reduce everything into physics is basically what it looks like. So that's my journey to today. That's where all the gray hair comes from. So the decades of experience are reduced to gray hair.
Well, let me ask you a question about some of the journey pieces you mentioned. And I don't know, take us inside of a meeting room where you're the one who's not like the others, and where, how did you walk? Because here's the setup. Okay, Seth, there's so many leaders that we work with who are like they're not as maybe different as, as it is to talk with you, but they're the one who knows a thing about a thing. And it's their turn eventually to take a question from a bunch of the suits, if we want to say that. And there's frankly a lot of nerves around how to come in with a solid idea, sentence, claim, something or another without losing their balance. And what I mean by that is being looked at as haughty or egotistical and not coming in clear enough. Did you have experiences like that in some of the meeting rooms, some of your more tense moments, or maybe just some of your best moments? What was it like to be in some of those meetings?
Yeah. So, I think a couple things. I think I had confidence doing that because I started my career basically being the odd person out. Right.
So where did that confidence start from? Like, did you just grow up a confident person?
No. I actually was not. And in fact, I outside of work, I was not confident. And I got confident in that place because I was thrown in with a bunch of people I was the biologist. I didn't know anything about semiconductors. I taught myself how to program. And so I kind of built that confidence of being the odd person out and asking questions that no one else would ask because I just did. It was okay not to know. Yes. I learned it was okay not to know and to ask questions. And in learning it was okay. And the way I learned it was okay not to know is I would often get, either in the old days, people would come up to me afterwards and say, "I'm glad you asked because I didn't know."
Yes.
And then in modern days, now I get Slacks or tech messages saying, "I've been here for 30 years. I don't know what that means. Thank you."
Yes.
Right?
I love that.
Yeah. And so, it's okay to say, "I don't know." I think that's number one. And quite honestly, men have a hard time saying, "I don't know." So as a man, I think it's important to recognize it's okay to say, "I don't know." In terms of speaking up and confronting a hard situation at work, I think quite honestly, let's be real, it's honestly easier for a man to do that.
Mm-hmm.
They're given a little more leeway to do things like that
Mm-hmm.
than our people of color are. And I can only speak to how it is a man to do that.
Okay. Sure. Sure.
Um, and so, you know, I think it's situationally, right?
Mhm.
Company
Sure.
by
Sure.
company.
Yep.
So doing that at Monsanto, it was very expected. Uh, and there was a
Go
culture
against the
where,
grain and kind of come at something a different way. Is that what you mean? That was
yeah,
unexpected.
it was a very science-based culture. Everyone was a scientist. Everyone was everyone questioned everything.
Okay. Got it.
That was just the way it was. That was just the
Mm-hmm.
culture of the
Mm-hmm.
organization. Now, as you go higher in an organization, there is inherently a resistance to tell people what's going on. It's
Mm-hmm.
not that the people at the top don't want to know,
Mm-hmm.
it's that your peers and the people above you don't necessarily, they want to candy coat what's happening,
Mm. Position it. Mm-hmm.
for a variety of reasons.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
The people at the top absolutely want to know what's going on.
Right.
And so you may get pushback not because people don't want to know the truth, but because you have to be delicate about how you say it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
because it could be political suicide
Yeah. Right.
for you and for them. So if you work for
Yeah.
someone and you say something, it's political suicide for them if you
Yeah. Right.
say it,
Be
right? And
careful.
so you
Mhm.
have to be careful.
Yeah.
As you get higher up in the organization, it gets more and more dangerous for your boss when you say something.
Yeah. Well,
And that's important to remember, as you get higher. And that's why as you speak to people, like if you go speak to someone that reports to the CEO, there's lots of prep work, and they want to
sure.
be
Yeah.
careful about what you say because it reflects on them and it reflects
Yes.
on your chain.
Yes.
And so that's why there's all that prep. And
Yes.
so
I do
um,
the prep with the people.
yeah,
It's like, I got a
um,
meeting on Tuesday, Cindy. I got 30 minutes with the CEO. What should I say? I'm like, let's talk. Yeah, let's figure it out.
right. And it's about how you frame the
Yeah.
truth. And I think, you know, quite honestly, I struggled with that because I was, you know, I was the kind of person that didn't want to sugarcoat
Yeah.
things,
Mm-hmm.
um, and and so I struggled with how to bring it up, how you know, and people would look at me kind of strange and cross-eyed when I would say things, and you know, but it was appreciated when I brought them up
Mm-hmm.
by the person I was bringing them up
Mm-hmm.
to always. But there was, you know, I got dinged for it a lot of
Sure.
times.
Sure. Well, Seth, I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are around, authenticity and being vulnerable and showing, because those are qualities that we know research wise people crave and seek out in their in the workplace culture. And, you just finished a segment around understandably needing to be careful about what you say and knowing that you might commit political suicide. So how do you balance those? And I'll just start there. How do you think about
Yeah,
those
I
two?
mean, I think being authentic is really important. I mean, the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years of my career, I was a leader,
Hmm.
or manager and then a leader. We can talk about the
Hmm.
transition when I made the transition. We
Hmm.
talked about that in our prep, right?
Yep.
And I think being authentic I think it's always important to be authentic, but I think when you're a leader, it's even more important to be authentic,
Hmm.
um, and vulnerable, uh, because otherwise people aren't going to, you're not going to be a leader if you're not authentic
Oh, I like
and,
that.
and you're not vulnerable,
Hmm.
because people are less inclined to trust you.
Right. Exactly.
Um, and they're less inclined to actually do what we just talked about. They're less
Yep.
inclined to tell you what's going on, and you need that visibility to what's going on to be a good leader. So you need that.
Yeah.
You need to be authentic. You need to be vulnerable,
Hmm.
so they feel like they can be authentic with you, because it's a two-way
Yep.
street. If you're not authentic with them,
Exactly.
they don't feel like they can be authentic with you.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to create that connective trust thread. And without that, and without being vulnerable and being authentic, you maybe aren't a very good leader at all. And so that comes through trial and error, and being modeled those qualities by someone else in your life is usually an interesting question we can tack on to the end about maybe who's guided you in your life around those qualities. Hey listeners, super quick station break question for you. Have you ordered your copy of my new best-selling book, Red Light, Green Light? Check it out. Grab your copy today at onpoint-communications.com/book. And now back to the show. Let's jump to the question I've been looking forward to batting around with you, Seth. Tell us the setup to this when it comes to, what the leader, I think it was at Monsanto you mentioned, who said to you, yo, you're the one now who's going to have to lead everybody underneath you, and it's time to get visionary. It's time to get motivating and inspiring. And just the reason I want to dive into this with you is because this is the hinge. This is the place. This is the inflection point where leaders that we see and teach and work with, they have to go from this sense of like, I lead a lab to I need to be a leader with vision and encouragement and inspiration. And I'm an introvert, right? Or whatever or I've never done this. So help us understand that moment, first of all, and then the journey.
Yeah, I think I want to start with one thing though. So two things. One, I'm an introvert, so I hate talking. I hate talking to people I don't know. It's so draining. It's exhausting. I shouldn't say I hate it. It's exhausting. It's draining. I can do it, but it's painful. Yeah. Two is I think it's important for people to realize that there are or should be other ways to grow besides being a manager.
Okay.
And being a leader is one of them. And so this is a really important conversations, because there are people that just should never be a manager. Okay. And it's because it's just not cut. They're not cut out for it for a variety of reasons. And I think that's a whole nother conversation.
That's a whole different podcast.
Yeah, that's a whole nother, probably multiple podcasts. And so I think this was a really huge inflection point in my career. I had been a manager actually almost since I left graduate school at this point. And so this was 2011, 2012 timeframe. And I had been leading a group across the world, several hundred people. And I was moving from the running, labs around the world for Monsanto into the IT department to start transforming the whole company. So moving from transforming using data and AI to transforming the whole company. And the guy that I said, Stan, who called me before I was at Monsanto and said, come work for me. And I said, no, but I'll come talk to you. Said, Stan, he and I still talk. I know. And he said, I want you to come take this job. And he said, but you have no one reporting to you. It's an individual contributor role. And I'm like, dude, this sounds like a complete demotion. I have this huge team, right? Because for me at that point, that was, how many people you have reporting to you was everything, right? That meant that meant how important you were. That meant, how that meant everything. And, and he said, no, you're thinking about this all wrong. He said, how many people you have reporting to you, that doesn't matter. That's completely irrelevant. He said, what is relevant is you now have the whole company working for you. Your job as a leader, not as a manager, your job is now to be a leader and figure out how do you convince the whole company to do what you need them to do and to motivate them. And he said, more importantly, how is it more important than what their manager and everyone around them thinks it is? Yeah. To get them motivated to do. Right. Because they don't report to you, but you need to have them motivated by you. They have zero responsibility or accountability to me. And how do I convince them? And he said, that's your job. Okay. So how'd you do it? Give us the playbook, Seth. Yeah. And so that was a huge inflection point just across the board in my mindset and from in
Yeah.
everything, right? And so that was where I went from. I used to think I was a leader, right? And I used to think there was no different
Mm.
from being a manager and being a leader. I thought once you're a manager, you're a leader. No, two completely
Wow. Love.
fundamentally different things.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
right? There's lots of people that are managers that are not leaders.
Mm.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
people that are leaders that are not managers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of people that are both.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing was, from that point on, I never cared how many people reported to me. If you want to pay me the
I
same
love
thing and
that.
have no one report to me, that's fine. It's just really about what the outcome is. And so, what did I do? That's where I learned. This is still really important today. It's about the value proposition. How do
Mm-hmm.
you create a value proposition for the people that you're trying to get to change?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you figure out what's important to them?
Yes.
And how do you do that in a way within the bounds of a company culture,
Yeah. That's not
right?
easy. Mm-hmm. I
Um,
mean, this is like a lot of red lights, right? All in a row. Like you've got a bunch of barriers to getting where you hope to get to based on the charge that you've just received. And now you've got to figure out how to turn them all green,
yeah,
really.
and then how do you do that at the same time while you're moving forward? And so, and I'm a very impatient person
Okay.
naturally, and
Okay.
my MO is usually just go do stuff, and if
Mhm.
people don't go with me, fuck them, right?
Okay.
That's you.
I'm the casualty.
That's usually my attitude, right? And I mean,
Okay.
I've got a little at this point. I've gotten a little bit better than that, but not
Okay.
honestly, not too much better than that. I mean, I'm much better now, but
Here.
that's where I was at this point in my life.
Okay.
Um, and and so so while I was figuring this out, I took the opportunity to identify, okay, where do I have champions? Where do I have people that are
Mm.
excited about where we need to go and what we need to do? And so I
Mm-hmm.
started there, right? I grabbed the people and started getting traction where there were people that were super
Great.
excited, both at the
Great
top and the
idea.
bottom,
Yep.
right?
Awesome.
And so there were people at the top of the organization on the senior management team that were super excited, and there were people at the bottom. And it's just happened to be that that's where the people were. I didn't look
Okay.
at the top and the bottom, but that's where the people were.
Okay.
And I found out later this is very common, right?
Okay. Yeah, I'm
Um,
curious about that too, because the top and the bottom, that's interesting. What was the
yeah.
part about the people at the
So
bottom?
actually, this I now refer to, and my old boss refers to this as the clay layer,
The
because you get
clay
water,
layer.
you get water that moves through. And in change management, this is a common process because these are the people that have typically been in their job for a long time in middle management, and they look at the status quo
Mm-hmm.
as security.
Okay. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and the people below look at change to the status quo as an opportunity to move up.
Mm-hmm.
And the people at the top are typically the ones that are driving change.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so that kind of middle layer
Love
typically
that.
is where you get the resistance.
Okay.
But I didn't know this at the time, right? So I have a
Yeah, that's
lot
brilliant.
going on in hindsight, right? So this was
Love
all,
that.
some of this was complete dumb luck, if
Right.
we're,
Okay.
or I don't want
Fair.
to say dumb luck, but some of it was serendipity, right? I saw an
Yeah.
opportunity, I took it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really believe in luck, but
Mm-hmm.
so I started doing things like hackathon. So how do we motivate empower the group at the bottom, and talk about vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
and authenticity. I promise people at the bottom, this is what we need to do. I will always 100% have your back. Your
Mm-hmm.
boss, right? Your boss has a problem with this. I asked you to do
Blame it on
this.
me, right? Answer to
I
me.
I
Okay.
will I will go talk to them. I will have your
Yeah.
back. If you get in trouble, I will
Yeah.
intervene. And I
Okay.
always intervened.
That's a trust factor, major.
Always.
Yeah.
But it's also
Yeah.
part of being trust is part of being authentic. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, I always intervened. I never backed off. I never, it was, I don't use the word always very, very frequently, but this was an always.
Okay.
If I involve someone in something, I took accountability for it, and that was that. And people knew it, and that was a really important part of the change,
Mm-hmm.
and getting that bottom part of the organization motivated.
Yeah.
Um, and so, that authenticity, and to this day, there's a lot of people that worked for me at Monsanto. This was almost 20 years ago now, or 15 years ago now. They would
Hmm.
work for me today. That's part of the reason.
Okay. Well,
So
this may be a granular question for you, Seth, but when I'm thinking about your situation and what you had to drive in terms of inspiration and motivation and a hackathon was an example of something you did to instill this motivation. How did you, like, literally, how did you communicate to this entire workforce? Was this like email? Did you speak? Did you have one-on-ones, lots of coffees and cocktails? Like, how did you seep into those layers with your idea so that you could even get things off the
yeah,
ground?
so I had a lot of help from my boss
Okay.
and my boss's boss on this, and
Okay.
so I was not well equipped to do this. Like,
Okay.
intellectually, I didn't know how to do
Yeah.
this.
The
I had a
order
lot
of
of
things.
I had a lot of support on how to do
Mhm.
this.
Mhm.
Um, and so, and from a couple of my peers too. So this was
Sure.
not something. So I think number one was, my boss's boss, Jim Swanson, who's at J&J now. He's a CIO there.
Mhm.
He's like, you got to just keep saying the same thing over and over and over again, just
Yes. Repeat.
until you think you've said it too many times, and then keep saying it.
Keep saying it.
Right.
Oh, I love that.
Um,
Yes, that's so true. So
yeah.
true.
And so that was the first thing. He's like, just keep saying it over and over
Mhm.
again.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and
So good.
yeah, and then they gave me the money I needed. I
Mhm.
didn't have a lot of
Okay.
money, but they gave me the
Yeah.
money I needed to do stuff. Right? They gave me the money I needed to have a company-wide hackathon,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they all showed up. Right? The
Good.
executive team showed up.
Yeah,
Right?
they stepped in. Yeah.
It's things like that that are important. Right? We had
That's
a
yeah.
good chunk of the company show up, and the executive team shows up.
Yeah, that's huge. Yes.
That
Yes.
means a lot, right? And so
Totally.
having support like that was important.
Mm.
But
It's good.
having the ability to communicate to them that I needed them to do that, creating a value
Yes.
proposition for them, right? Getting back to the
Yeah.
value proposition. They have
Mhm.
no accountability to me, obviously,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Right,
Um,
right.
but what's the value proposition to them, right?
Right.
What
Right.
is the value to the company,
Right.
right? To their
Repeat, repeat,
commitment,
repeat, repeat.
right? What's the
Right.
value to the company for them to go spend an
Mhm.
hour having lunch at this hackathon? And so, how did I create that value proposition for them?
Yeah.
How did
Yeah,
I
that's so
create the
good.
value proposition for the senior management team to let half the company show up to
Mhm.
this hackathon for almost a week? It was a
Yeah.
5-day long hackathon, right?
Wow.
So, um,
It's a
so
big investment.
how did we
Mhm.
create the value proposition for that, right? So these were the kinds of things that you have to think about: is how do you convince people that they need to do things that today seem to go against their better interest,
Yep.
but in the long term are actually in their better interest.
Right. Well, and by virtue of creating the 5-day hackathon event, you were putting down what the level of importance was and what the value proposition was based on the fact that, it took up a lot of space. Events are a way of commanding attention and giving meaning to something. And so
Right.
if the hackathon was in the middle of the night on the weekend, like a startup weekend used to be, that's completely different at what you're communicating than taking up 5 days, maybe offsite, maybe whatever it is, but the event itself communicates, and that's an interesting piece of your story that I didn't know,
Yeah.
which is telling. So,
Yeah. And
well,
having the executive team show up for lunch every day. That's
yeah,
telling.
oh yeah, that's huge. I
That
mean,
gets
I'm
people
always
motivated
asking.
to come.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love it. When we were out at Google doing our on-site training in San Francisco, we got the senior vice president to come in for a fireside chat for the first 20 minutes of the day-long event, because she had skin in the game and we wanted her voice in the room, and we wanted the troops to hear from her about why she felt this training was important. And it was fantastic. We spent literally 20 minutes just, we planned some of the questions about, and helped her come across as vulnerable and authentic as well, and yet in charge and the executive, right? But it was a very powerful habit or move that I've continuously encouraged teams to do. Like, who's at the tip top, and can they fly in for the day and say, I'm glad you're investing this time in yourselves to grow at this skill, because this is important to the mission of our division. And thank you for being here. Right. I mean, that goes such a long way. So it's a really smart move. Let me ask you a question, Seth, as we're kind of winding down here, about what you learned about the people you ended up motivating as you look back at that process. And here's why I'm going to ask you that. It is daunting and somewhat scary for leaders who need to go out on that limb and create new language and messages around inspiring and motivating and storytelling, because it's not natural to a lot of leaders to talk from the heart, about the heart, with heart. And so that in itself can be very challenging, and yet it's required. If you're going to motivate people and encourage them to follow you, you have to make it about heart. What did you learn about what motivates people?
I think there's different layers to it, right? I think there's the deck you make, right?
Mm-hmm.
The story you tell to the whole organization.
I love that you said that. That's awesome.
Right?
The deck matters, people.
Yeah. So there's the deck you make that you present over and over again, right? I'm doing that right now. I'm raising money, so I'm making the pitch
Love
deck.
it. You know what that is.
That's evergreen, that never changes. That I'm on version like 50.
Sure.
Right. Then there's the story you tell to the individual business units.
Love it.
Then it gets more and more granular as you're talking to different people, because you have to talk to the person.
Yes.
And you can't have the same story for everyone, because everyone has a different value proposition. Everyone has a different thing that's important to them. I'll give you a great example. And this is more of a manager example. Sure. So I had an employee that worked for me, and I used to have one-on-ones. I think one-on-ones are silly now, but I used to have one-on-ones. I had this employee, and he was unhappy, and I said, why are you unhappy? And he said, I don't feel like you listen to me. And I don't feel like, he said, I don't feel like you know what I'm doing, and you know what's going on. Wow. And I said, well, why don't you feel like, I said, we have one-on-ones every week. Why don't you feel like you know what's going on? Well, I know what's going on. And he was a Chinese, older Chinese man. And he said, well, you never write anything down.
Okay. Wow.
And I said, would it help if I write anything down? And he said, it would help me if you wrote stuff down. I said, I just want to be honest with you. When I write stuff down, I don't read my notes. And he said, that's fine. I just need you to write it down, because it makes me feel like you're listening. Yeah,
that's actually beautiful. Like, I mean, do what he needs you to do to make him feel like you're listening, even though you already are. Know the person in front of you and know what reaches them. Apparently his, I'm putting my fingers in quotes, but like, his love language is people writing things down means you're listening to me.
Yeah, he just needed me to write it down. So that was his cue that I was listening, was that I was taking notes.
That is cool.
I had a notebook just for him. He was the only one I had an individual notebook for. And he knew I wasn't ever going to look at it, but he was okay with that. So did that change everything for your one-on-one? It absolutely did. It absolutely did, but I was authentic with him. I know. So I was still, and that's important, I was still authentic with him. I didn't make believe I was going to, and so I think that's cool story. Too. Thank you for sharing that story. That is really interesting and very unique and very telling. I love that.
Hey, listeners, super quick station break question for you. Have you ordered your copy of my new best-selling book, Red Light, Green Light? Check it out. Grab your copy today at onpoint-communications.com/book. And now back to the show. Wow, Seth, I want to bottle you up. All the things you said here today are so perfectly what, we work on with leaders in terms of that, a lot of the pieces that you shared. So, what a really cool journey and a very eclectic one as well. And I know it's not over yet. So tell us about what you would like to tell us what you'd like to about what's happening right now and what's in front of you.
Yeah, so ARYA Labs is a what's called a world model company, but we build deterministic world models. So every AI company out there right now is probabilistic, meaning they're based on probability. So like, we have elections and so 90% chance someone's going to win. That means there's a 10% chance that same person's going to lose. And deterministic means it's going to happen, right? So you get the exact output.
Wow.
And the way we do that is we start with a mathematical proof. And so we start with math and we then build the AI on top of that. And world models are the next version of AI after the chat GPTs of the world. And they're essentially representations of the real world in math. And they operate much like your brain. And so the mathematical proofs, we start with our physics because the real world is represented by physics. And so we look at things like industries like aerospace and defense, biotech and pharma, energy, and we can essentially make replicas of the real world with AI. So we can basically, like one of the things we did was we have a reproduction of the orbit between Earth and Mars. And scientists from NASA could put in a satellite and say, we need to reduce the weight of the satellite by 20 kilograms. Our system will take the satellite, 1,000 times between Earth and Mars and throw all the physics at it and say, here's how you reduce the weight. It saves them $3 million. But if you put it in there 100 times, you will get the same CAD drawing out with the same exact answer because it's deterministic.
So
whereas if you were to do the same thing with a probabilistic, you would get 100 different CAD drawings back out.
Yeah. Okay. So you're able to give people certainty with the models that you're building.
Mathematical certainty.
Basically what you're selling. So I have a daughter who's a math major and almost was a physics major. She's maybe your first intern. No. Do you have mathematicians on staff? Like who's on your team right now that you and where are you getting the brain power to create these?
Yeah, so it's basically actually just two of us right now because we haven't closed any funding. We're bootstrapping, so it's myself and my co-founder, and so he's a physicist.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm a geneticist.
And you're all jack of all trades. Okay. Yeah. This was Army night.
He and I built the product. He built most of it. I built some of it.
Amazing. Well, who are you what kind of buyer would, I mean, you mentioned the use case you just had, but are there segments that you're looking at initially for use?
So engineers in aerospace and defense, scientists in biotech and pharma. So in addition to like just reducing weight, a scientist could put something in and say, if it doesn't make it back, fix it, and it would fix it. So, we can also do things like design drugs with certain constraints.
Interesting.
Like don't go down this mode of action or don't interact with this other drug. We're working on reproducing AlphaFold, which is something that Google's DeepMind did. You're familiar with that because you work. That took Google decades and hundreds of millions of dollars. We think we can do it for less than $50,000. In a couple months. So scientists and engineers at energy companies, whether it's oil and gas or green energy companies. So those are
that's fantastic. You're on a new value prop to tell, a new storyline to sell, and a new place for people to journey with you. So you've clearly cut your teeth on a lot of those skills already. So it must be just another exciting place for you to take your all the packaged up things you've learned and done, and do a new endeavor that's going to make a difference in the world. So it must be very
Yeah.
exciting. And
Yeah.
now you're
So,
out.
yep, the value prop, like you nailed the value prop, right? Mathematical certainty, and
Yeah, love that.
a thousand
That's
x faster, and we'll save you 90+% of the cost.
Well, awesome. I mean, like, your pitch worked for me, so I think you're good to go. No. Well, Seth, let's just stop with one final question that I like to ask, which is there anybody in your orbit who has been particularly influential that you would, give a tip of the hat to, who's maybe given you an opportunity, or formed you in a certain way that you didn't know then, but now you're like, if I hadn't met that person or done that thing, or if this person hadn't said that one thing to me in my low moment, I don't know if I'd be where I am, or I'd be who I am. Is there anybody that comes flying to the front of your mind?
Well,
I'm
so
sure
I
there are
mean,
many, but yeah,
this sounds, I think there's two people, but one of them's my wife. I mean, this sounds
I
kind
love
of
it. No,
um,
it's great.
kind of
It's great.
squishy. I mean, yeah. So one of them's my wife.
It's
Um,
fantastic.
she,
Shout out.
yeah. So she always sees things in me that I don't see,
Yeah.
um,
Oh, that's so great.
and
Mm.
always sees things around corners that I don't see, good and bad.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
and so most of the time I don't listen to her with the bad.
Maybe you should start with that.
But yeah, but she sees them, and so I know I at least have the where someone's at least warned me. Yeah, you'd
Okay.
think I would be listening by now after
No,
all this
I
time. But,
no, I understand. I
yeah,
understand what
and
you're saying.
so and then I honestly would not be where I am without my wife.
Yeah. That's
But
great.
we've been married for 25 years. We've been together for a lot longer than that. I
Nice.
wouldn't be
Awesome.
where I am without her.
That's
Um,
wonderful.
yeah, and then in at work, Stan, the
Mhm.
guy I mentioned,
Yeah, Stan. Yeah.
that one inflection point
Yeah.
changed me as a
Yeah.
leader. Plus, he's a good friend still. But yeah,
Yeah, that's
but
fantastic.
yeah, but the most
Well,
influential person is my wife.
yeah, I love that. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And to all of you listening, I hope what you grabbed, which I'm sure were many different things, but is just the confidence to charge forward to your inflection point, right? Like, what is your inflection point? What is if you are looking at you 1.0, where you are right now, like, what is your you 2.0, and then your you 3.0? We talk in that language a lot when I'm working on developing leaders out of the 1.0 to the 2.0. And your story of going up that notch is hopefully very inspiring to others about what's possible when you charge forward and you get creative and you ask for help from other stakeholders internally to get their buy-in, and you find your champions. That was one of my takeaways, was let's start with the people who are already excited, who are already motivated, and then let's swirl around from some other resource points to make
And I think
this.
something else that's in there too is, don't ever take a job that you're 100% qualified for.
Ooh,
I didn't explicitly say that, but I've never taken a job that I was 100% qualified for. There's always
yeah,
been room for me to grow. And
yeah,
in
yeah,
some cases, there was a lot of room for me to grow, and I'd come home
yep,
every day and go, "What the hell did I do?"
yeah, right. That
But I always grew into the role because I always had something to focus on that I could bring to the role.
yes, yes, fantastic. Yeah, leave room for stretch in those roles, especially as you're getting further and further in your career. Seth,
But
thank you
you have
so
to grow,
much.
or you're not going to get anything out of it. Yeah.
Yes, yes, thank you so much for joining me today. This was just as much fun as I was expecting.
Yep. Thank you for having me, Cindy.
Yes, my pleasure. Thanks everybody for listening. If you loved this episode as much as I did, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need this inspiration. Follow us wherever you podcast. Reach out to Seth at LinkedIn. He's there on LinkedIn very frequently, sharing all kinds of brilliance and great articles. What's the name of your newsletter, Seth?
Silicon Sands News.
Silicon Sands News. Until next week, I'll be back next week with another fantastic guest to share with you. And until then, get out there, find an audience, figure out your ways to move them from the red light of risk to the green light of go so that you can nail it with your stakeholder audience. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.